Welcome to Bridgewalkers Tea. Grab your tea, pull up a chair, and join us in these conversations around practical spirituality, systemic change, and solopreneurship. I'm Manasi Kakade, a practical spirituality mentor and speaker for Bridgewalkers.
I'm Marcia Bernstein, a house whisperer and lifelong traveler on the wisdom path of Mothership India.
A Bridgewalker is an analytical, critical thinker fascinated by spirituality.
According to human design, both of us are line 1-3 profiles. What this means is that we investigate and experiment a lot, and we share with others what works and what doesn't, and what is worth struggling for. We would love for you to join the conversation too, so don't hesitate to submit your comments or questions via the form. The link is in the description. If you are enjoying this experience, please take some time to review us and subscribe. That will help us to reach more Bridgewalkers.
We hope that these candid, unfiltered conversations bring you new perspectives, spark an inspiration, and give you the confidence to shine in your own unique way of being, called dharma in Sanskrit. Because it's through your dharma that you are going to contribute to building new social systems and structures rooted in love, equality for all souls, and equity for the marginalized. And that's what being a Bridgewalker is all about. Are you ready? Let's begin. Good morning, Marcy. Welcome to Bridgewalkers Tea. Welcome back.
Good morning, Manasi. Yes, great to be back.
For our listeners, today Marcy is joining me instead of Rose. And Marcy is also going to be our regular part of the Bridgewalkers team from going forward, because Marcy and we recorded one conversation around seasons in nature and seasons in life and business. And that episode did very well. So people really liked what Marcy had to say. So we are bringing back Marcy as a regular contributor to Bridgewalkers Tea. Marcy, I'm so glad and happy and honored that you have chosen to accept this invitation.
Well, Manasi, you know it's my pleasure, and I'm so excited to be here again and looking forward to doing more in the future with you. And it's just a great opportunity. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's just jump into our conversation this week when we were talking about, do we have a topic in mind? Because as you know, when Rose and I get together, there is no topic in mind. We just come up onto the topic. So you said to me, you're like, Manasi, there is some revelation that I have had in your own healing journey in the last week. So let's pick up that thread. Tell me more about what it was, or like, what do you remember about it?
Happy to do that. So the subject that the light bulb went off for me was money wounds. But I also want to say that in my life, what I find is it's more like peeling of an onion. You know, I'm always revisiting things. Mm-hmm. So money issues have been important lessons in my life. And so they do come up again and again. But this one was a little unexpected. Mm-hmm. So I think when people talk about money wounds, we presume that people are speaking of the lack of money in their lives, and that creates a wound for them, logically so. Having not enough and having that feeling is important, but those may be two different things. Having the feeling of lack of abundance can also exist when you have plenty.
Of course, yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
And it's not all that uncommon. I used to think it was really uncommon, but it's not all that uncommon. Mm-hmm. But what I started to realize the other day was, oh yes, it's coming back to me now. So good things. So I've done well in life. Financially, I'm really very stable, although that word stability is still difficult for me because money was the way that I was raised and whatnot. I never felt comfortable about the funds that I did have, nor my successes around those funds. So I've really done quite well in life. I do many things for work, but one of them over the years has been independent real estate investing, with a lot of spiritual approach thrown in there. And I've done well. So this all gets revisited in some ways because I'm now at least in retirement age, although I'm not really retired. And so you sort of re-examine this and you wonder, how will I be for the next number of years? It looks very different than when you're 40 and earning money. Will my money go far enough? Do I really want to stop or not? What is it? So about 3 years ago, I sold a beautiful big house on the ocean and 15 acres, and it was just a fantastic home, timber frame, owner built it, just a wonderful home. And I decided to, with my husband, to downsize. And we naively bought, because we are very interested in potentially the next home was supposed to be a architectural built home. And we were very interested in the climate and ecology. It's just a theme that runs through my life. So we bought a very small eco home to try it on for size. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting because I suddenly realized, and we love the house. It's just a bit small. I mean, we downsized from including a very large barn and rental space from 5,000 square feet to just under 1,000 square feet. So storage is a problem. I will say that, people, make sure you get storage if you're going to do something like this.
I remember. May I just say something in the middle? Yeah. I remember you telling us when we were buying our home, and there was one that we were looking at. You're like, Manasi, this home has zero storage. Like, there is no shed, there is no garage, there is nothing, there is no basement. Where are you going to keep your stuff? I remember you specifically telling us that.
Yeah. Yeah. And we went through, and by the way, I'll add here. So, because this is all part of it. I've gone through the process of only trying to hang on to those things that I love and getting rid of the rest, or donating it or rehousing it or whatever. So, I mean, we're very conscious people, and it's wonderful to be that way. But I realized just recently that it does create a little bit of conflict for me, because especially in the real estate business, people perceive your success in some ways by the mansion that you own or something. You know what I mean? And
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yes. And I thought, gee, that's so interesting, because in some ways my wealth has bought me freedom to make decisions, and the decisions I make are not downwardly mobile. It doesn't mean that I want less. It is representative of the fact that I think that less for me represents simplicity and closer to the way that I want to live. I'm able to put emphasis on what I want, which is the surroundings, the nature, and so on and so forth. And this house is very natural. And anyway, so that's what I realized. It got complicated because I realized, gee, this really separates me out from some of my friends, but and collaborators and people that I work with, because I don't really, our tendency is not to drive fancy cars. Mm-hmm. I barely go anywhere anyway, so we buy less. Or Joel just purchased an e-vehicle, an electric vehicle. I have had fancy cars in the past, Land Rovers and such, but I don't do that any longer, where our interest has shifted. So what does this mean in terms of how the world perceives you? It's very interesting. And so that just dawned on me. And even so much as my husband said to me, well, it's so interesting because, I mean, these are friends of mine, truly, but in the real estate world, they travel less with me because they're generally looking for people who are, if they're having a fundraising, they're going to donate, $20,000 check, or they're going to buy over $1 million home, or they're going to buy, or in Maine, we've gotten to $2 million homes, we've gotten further, and so Marcy and Joel are just over here living very eco-conscious life, close to the land, and really, truthfully, inexpensively. That's our goal. Mm. How does that settle with me at this stage? And so I recognize, wow, it's really a theme in my life, kind of, but not to have no money. It's not that. I don't do it. I feel strongly that people must have a sensation of abundance, and put food on their table, take care of their lives, be able to pay their medical, take care of their families, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's the bottom line. We have a right to do that. We have a divine right to do that. We must do that. We wish for people's success. But once you have that, you may make a choice to not continually add more in terms of objects and physical abundance. It's the sensation inside.
Absolutely. And I think what is the difference here is the energy of abundance is different than just money.
Totally.
And we have to recognize that, because in our capitalist productivity valuing world, it tells you that once you acquire a certain amount of money, you need to aspire for more money. Then you aspire for even more money. Then once that is done, you may aspire for bigger house. You may want a house to begin with, then a bigger house, then a different fancy car, then fancier clothes or something. Then, I don't know, throwing parties that are elaborate and like whatever it is. But basically people equate that their value as who we are is in the money, or the
Yes.
showing off of that money. And it's that itself is a problem, because if we start equating our value to our money, then the money wounds are going to come in there. And that's where you're talking about, like, even you can have money and you will still not feel abundant. You will still have a wound. You will still feel scarcity around money. And that is actually my story. Like, I grew up in a middle class family where I was it was still a stable household, financially stable household. Yes, my mom and dad had their own like stresses that came around their own businesses and all of that, but overall speaking, the stress wasn't ever so much that it got to us. I picked up wounds from it, that's for sure, but it wasn't as much. And then later on in their life, they were even doing even better. As they settled, as their businesses settled, they were doing even better. But wounds were still there. And in my case, what happened was, growing up in India, because of the population and because of all the wealth that India has lost in colonization, it's now cutthroat competition for everything. So a way out of poverty, or way of thinking that I will get opportunities, are education and money. So if you have formal education, you are going to have an opportunity to make more money, like work in a multinational company where you will get maybe paid more, or the job will have status, something like that. And then the money that you then get will get you out of the current situation that you're in, which is whatever situation your family is in. You will move to the next tier of that wealth, and then through that you will you will have more freedom to make the choices that you actually want to make choices. Like, for example, if I want to buy a new dress, I don't have to wait for it maybe for a festival to come around and save money and buy a dress, or I can just go out and buy a dress now, right? So something like that. And that kind of thinking then makes you chase money and chase formal education, which is why a lot of Indians are such highly educated, because they see that that is their only way out of the situation that they are in, whatever that situation is. By the way, it doesn't matter. You can be rich, you can be underprivileged wealth wise, but in all cases, this is what happens. Like, you strive for that education, formal education, you strive for the money. And because of that, I had this idea in my mind that the education I am getting is simply to get me money, and that will then give me happiness. But it wasn't giving me any happiness, because I have my master's degree in electrical engineering. Then I did my MBA. I have 2 master's degrees, highly sought after. And there was a recession. As soon as I graduated, there was a recession. Nobody was hiring me because I was overqualified. And because I was, what they were saying is overqualified, what that meant is, we cannot basically justify paying you as much salary as you deserve, because for an immigrant to get the work permit, they have to justify, they have to pay them a certain level, and they have to justify that there is no other citizen who was capable of doing this job. So we had to go to the immigrant. They have to make that case, which in most cases, if it is engineering field, if it is certain business functions, you can easily make that case, because the seats just don't get filled. Like, they can advertise for 6 months, and the engineer, they would never find the engineer that they want. They're looking for. So they have to justify that. But then, in order to say that this is not an exploitation of the immigrant, They have to pay you at a certain level. And that certain level has to be approved by Department of Labor,
I
right?
had no idea.
Yeah, so all of this goes into hiring an immigrant. So somebody who complains like all these immigrants taking our jobs, no, we don't take your jobs. We only take the jobs that nobody and the citizens is doing, or they're available to do, right? Because there is a lot that goes into hiring an immigrant. It is made very difficult to hire an immigrant. It's not that easy, which is why then once you get a job as an immigrant, it's like a really big deal. So I did not have a job for 2.5 years.
Huh.
And I was surviving on my savings. And mind you, that savings, this idea that I need to save, that itself came from a money wound, because I don't know when I will get my money next. That came from my grandmother, from my mother. Like, we don't know when the money is going to come, right? Even my grandmother, that was born in a very, very wealthy family, like royal family, when she married my grandfather, who was an orphan and poor, but she was married to him looking at his potential that he's going to do some big things in life, which he ended up doing.
Yeah.
But she was married to him and she picked up the money wound. Like, I don't know, I was born in this royal family, married to this technically peasant, and that now I have to, like, this is what I'm dealing with, right? So she picked up all these money wounds and she would save a lot. Like, my grandmother really, because of her, I think my grandfather, who was doing all kinds of social work issues, whatever money he earned, he would put in the social work and social justice type of issues. He started schools, he started colleges, he put all that money into that. So the only reason I think even my father and my two uncles, they could even get an education was because of the savings that my grandmother did, right?
Mhm.
Similar story on my mother's side. Again, grandmother was saving and grandfather was investing all the money into the social justice issues.
Mhm.
Right. So now these two families, they have given me these money wounds, inherited money wounds that came from both more so from my mother. My father usually generally has a different mindset around money, but more so from my mother. So women's money wounds, like our needs would not be met because none of those were technically working or had as much freedom around money as I do today.
Right.
They didn't have that. So all of this, I'm here, like the third generation in the family, having a good job, good enough. It wasn't good. I understand now, looking back, that it wasn't great. It wasn't paying me great. But I was just happy to have some kind of job after 2.5 years of unemployment, right? So now I'm there. I am earning this money. I am working really, like burning myself out to earn that money. Still not happy with 2 degrees in there. And that's when I felt lost. That's when I was like, I don't think this is the answer. Like, this education, this money is not an answer. Not only that, then once I started my business, I realized I cannot even set my prices higher if I wanted to. So I was working like this crazy hours, charging $30 an hour, not even being able to sustain that lifestyle. Right. But all of that was coming because I was seeing my value in the amount of money I make. And initially in the business, I wasn't making much. In the job, I wasn't making much. Like, I had 2 whole friggin' degrees. I should have earned more than 6 figures, but I wasn't. Right. And all of those ideas around money, I picked up all those wounds. But part of it was also, I had financial stability, I had savings, I had investments, and I wasn't even looking at that as like financial wealth. I was only looking at that particular salary for a particular time period. So even though I had money and I had abundance and my money was growing, my money wounds weren't allowing me to see that as abundance. So while I was having this, so to think about it, that I had the privilege of not doing a job just because I had to. Right? Meaning I had the privilege of saying, no, I'm not going to do a job. I'm going to start my business and I will see where it takes me. I had the privilege of making that decision monetarily. Privilege. and it is abundance. And I still didn't think of that as abundance. So my money mindset was really like scarcity mindset while I had money.
Oh, well, I've told you that before. That's me all over the place. Now, part of it was a product. I mean, I did have before I moved to Maine, I had many other successful jobs, but one that I mentioned to people is I was working for Apple Computer and I was doing very well. But like you, I went, something's not quite right here.
Yeah.
So I moved to Maine and there's no place to work. It was during a recession. So that's how I ended up getting into real estate investing. Which sounds really good, but I didn't even realize the value of what I was doing. And I've been successful, but partly, and this is tough for folks. When I started out, I didn't make much money, but I still, all I wanted to do was live for free. And I managed to do that. My mortgage would be paid, my oil would be paid, whatever. But then you sell a building every 2 years or so, you'll get a few $100,000, or you might get $500,000. But you don't know how long that's going to last. So just the structure of how I was earning led to some more money wounds, really. Right.
And that's another thing too, right? Even in solopreneurship industry, you're these messaging that do you have 10K months, right?
Right.
And then you look at it and you're like, but I don't have 10K months, but I may have 50K in 1 month.
Right.
And that takes me for like 5-6 months. But it wasn't the case then, but I still was thinking in my mind that, just because I'm not earning a consistency is the word there, consistent income of a certain way, I must not be doing well. Right. So that's so not just the amount of money you make, but how you are making it, like in what rhythm you're making it, that also puts wounds on you. You're right about that.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm sort of, as I now switching, because to our listeners, so I'm now, so I did this real estate investment, which started out just as the typical, what you see on TV, house flipping to begin with. And I would manage all the jobs in one house at a time. Because of money wounds, I should have really done more, probably. But in any case, I loved, my true love of homes comes from the energy of the property. Right. That's me. A deep part of this conversation, actually. But right now we're just talking about actual money. And so I realized that right now, because I'm trying to shift more to do less physical work. I mean, for years, really, I've been in that process, and do more online digital work about how I made my money, what is important to me, how to share this with other people, the spiritual side of investing, how that's impacted me. And also there is a spirit, not many people think of this. I think, in fact, energies of buildings and what those buildings, what role they play in our lives is really not looked at much. It's one of the spiritual things that has not quite been cracked open yet. For at least, for people. So anyway, it's very important to me. So as I do that, I'm like, oh, gee, what does this mean to me as a 66-year-old woman who still wants to thrive and excel and go further and have potential and then share that? So it looks very different now. And I'm trying to figure out how now all those, the money wounds have shifted, but you don't just resolve them and leave them. I mean, they're part of the character of who we are. And so just recently I realized, I think the word that would best suit my current consciousness around my money relationship might be status, which is so interesting, because I did perceive that I had more status at the 15-acre on the ocean home.
Oh, interesting. Right? Yeah. I see that.
Partially because I could share that home more. Right. So I could invite people in. The physical size of this, while it's gorgeous and it's, we've got stunning furniture, we've got all kinds, it's a different presentation to the world. And I just hadn't realized that I was paying attention to that as much as I think I am, for better, for worse. I mean, it's just a lesson.
Right. And that's another thing, the status that is tied to money, because and part of it just class, right? Like classism, like, how do we separate ourselves, like the human being nature of trying to maintain control and authority in some way. So through money, when we attach status to it, then you better pay attention to what we are saying, because what we are saying must be important just because we have money and status, right? So that kind of systemic arrangement of our society that makes us automatically pick up this idea that if I have more money, if I have a bigger house, I have status.
Right.
And that itself is something we need to question.
Because you don't necessarily also people, a very smart tax accountant of mine over the years once said to me, Marcy, you would be surprised. People who you think have money, because they're living in those big houses, don't. Not
so that can
people who, look like they don't have money, do, right?
And that's also something I've observed in my life too, where I have met people who, if they are really, if they really have wealth, and if they have that abundant mindset, right? So they do have physical wealth, but they also have that abundance mindset, then they are usually a lot more humble and live a lot simpler, because they actually understand that their value is not in the clothing they wear or the cars they drive or the house they have. Their value is not in that. So once the abundance mindset, that's what it is, right? Abundance mindset basically is a function of Swadhisthana chakra, which tells you that who you are is where your value is. No matter where you are in your life, where you are in your healing journey, where you are in your financial journey, where you are in your business, none of that matters, because you are valuable simply because you exist.
Yeah.
So any external symptoms that people give you of your value, those are not really your value. Like you cannot see your value in a relationship. You cannot see your value in business or money you make or house you live in or how much money you really have. None of that really matters in deciding your value. You're valuable simply because you exist. And once we start getting it, then we actually start feeling abundant no matter where we are in our life. And once we start feeling abundant, interestingly, we generate the type of abundance that we were looking for.
It's totally true. It's just funny because as I approach now, as you know, looking at doing a launch on the new business, which should be after January, even though I've been talking about it for so long. I just had an outside perspective all of a sudden in a light bulb moment about how people perceive me, because I do feel more abundant. Now, I wouldn't say just from living this way. It's not that I'm living, my mortgage is smaller or something, right? It's literally that I feel more abundant as I embody more of who I am as a person. Right. And I move towards the energetics of my Marcy as a person versus the stuff that I have, right?
Right.
So anyway, it is interesting. So I started to think about, how will people perceive this? But it's like, it's not that I don't care. It's that, this is a more balanced chasing money as I did more when I was younger. Not that I'm saying that people shouldn't. I'm saying people should recognize their own personal abundance, and it differs for each person.
It is different for each person. And interestingly, here's the thing. One lesson that I have learned is chasing money never feels abundant.
It does not.
Never does. You can go after one goal to another and another, and there is always more you can make. There is always more you can invest. There is always more you can spend. Anything that is related to some kind of chasing an outcome or some kind of chasing of a milestone literally goes away from Swadhisthana chakra, which tells you that you should enjoy the process.
Yes.
It's the process. The meat is in the process. So
totally.
We are taken away from it. Like when I was chasing one goal after another in business, first of all, I wasn't hitting any of the goals because it wasn't motivating for me. So I was going away from my vision. And the reason I started business was literally to liberate myself, to understand what makes me unique, what is my unique gift to the world, to understand all of that. And I was getting all of that in my mistakes, in what I was learning, by teaching people when they will give me feedback. But I wasn't recognizing that to be abundance. Whereas if I were to now see, I was like, oh my gosh, that was so much abundance. People spend their lifetimes not understanding who they are. And I'm out here having clearer and clearer ideas every day about who I am. And that is such an abundance, but I wasn't looking at it that way because I wasn't making money in business.
Your spiritual cup over, or at least what I look for in my life, and I see in my friend Manasi, is that your spiritual cup overfloweth, right?
Yes.
That's abundance.
That is abundance,
Yes.
right? And once I started seeing that liberation of my soul is abundance.
Yes.
I started making money in business.
Yeah.
Because then people could see, like they could see how happy I am doing the business my way, challenging the ideas of the status quo, challenging the ideas of what we are being taught every day in the business strategy, in the world of coaching that is harmful. But earlier I was taking all those harmful teachings, and because I didn't have that sense of self-worth, I was thinking that, oh, they must be right and I must be wrong because they are making money and I'm not. Whereas I should have been, once I switched that perspective, I was like, you know what? Let them make money their way. Good for them. Excellent. But I need to make money my way. And the fact that I'm now recognizing what is my way, I'm moving in the right direction.
Me too.
The moment I understood that, it felt so abundant that I automatically started selling programs. I started selling out, I don't know, workshops or something else. But it really felt like when I, not felt, but that has been my experience, when I saw my abundance inside the way I had it, the way I had defined it, then everything else started changing in my external reality to reflect to me, yes, you deserve abundance. And in all forms. But first, let us understand, what is your definition of abundance? Which was, for me, it was liberation of my soul, creative freedom to do whatever I wanted. Because that's the freedom I didn't have when I was employed for somebody else. So now I have that freedom. I can decide that, oh, I want to give a musical workshop today, and I give it. No, I don't have to take permission from somebody to say, can we include music in a webinar? I don't have to do that. Right? And that is abundance for me.
Well, just to underline this, to put a big, bold underline, because I agree with you totally, and it's what I'm finding too. I met you almost 2 years ago, Manasi. Has it been that long?
Probably 3 months.
Probably, I think so. And now, because I am feeling the same way, more abundant, I'm meeting more Manasis for our listeners. Manasi is very precious to me, right? So it's wonderful. I know I am attracting the people that I want. I am attracting the conversations that I want. And attracting the business that I want. I was very successful, nearly killing myself in real estate investing and working like so much people an easy 8 hours a week, feeling like I had to do it because I was so afraid to not have any money, and I was pretty miserable. That's the bold underline. I was successful.
But miserable. And that was exactly my situation too. I had to drive on a good day 3 hours total, on a bad day 4 hours total, all the way to Boston to get.
Oh, you did that? I
did that commute for 3 years, Marcy.
I did the same thing, driving 2 hours to commute from the East Bay in California to Silicon Valley. 2 hours each direction in traffic. If that doesn't make you miserable, right?
If that doesn't make it miserable. And then I did that. Another way of looking abundance for me, Marcy, is also, like you said, not another way. So again, I want to underline what you said too. Number one, community. Right?
Oh, yes.
Like you're saying, I'm meeting more Manasis, I'm meeting more Marcys, more Bridgewalkers, right?
Yes.
It's where I felt lonely in who I am. Like, oh, I have this analytical side. I question the systems. I have spiritual too. All of this coming together, I'm now meeting people who are like that. I am creating my own community that I didn't have when I was starting my business. And I needed somebody to reinforce to me, yes, this is a racist teaching. Don't take this into account. This is sexist. This is wounded patriarchy talking to you. Don't take this into, like, ignore this teaching of business strategy. This is not right for you. If I had the right community, I would have felt so much more supported and nourished in that pursuit. As I was saying, oh, I must be there must be something wrong with me. Like, I'm thinking something wrong, because clearly what this man is teaching must be applicable to all these people, because he has all these clients that are working. And then I realized it's not working for many women. It's not working for many spiritual people. It's not working for many people who question systemic issues. So then,
Absolutely.
so then I'm like, oh my God. But when I saw my own abundance, I actually started attracting more people who think like me, who would reinforce to me, and we will reinforce to each other. You are right. There is
Mhm.
something wrong with this. We need to do business differently.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And by the way, speaking of community, I have just started Patreon, people. So
Yep.
go to Patreon. We will include the link below, because these are the communities we are creating so that you don't feel lonely in your journey of healing, entrepreneurship, in life. Just don't feel lonely. You don't have to do this alone. We have the community to do this. And second, I have Bridgewalkers Playground has gotten a makeover where
Uh-huh.
it's, yeah, that's the part. That's earlier, it was more like a group coaching type of thing. Now it is a mastermind type of experience.
Oh,
You
interesting.
don't just
Good.
learn from me, but you all come together and learn together and discuss ideas with each other. And this is done in a setting that is like 8 to 12 people in a group.
Are you,
Coaches, healers, artists, authors, speakers, all of
and
this.
is that also going to be run through Patreon?
No, that is run separately as like a different product, but I will include the link for Bridgewalkers Playground too. If
Good.
you're interested in that kind of mastermind experience with Bridgewalker solopreneurs, then go to the link, fill out the form, and we will get on a chat to see if this is the right fit for you, if we are vibing, stuff like that. Right. And of course, then one-on-one mentorship always exists to like reinforce the ideas. Like, hey, I'm feeling this. Is this right, Manasi? And then I'm like, that could be coming from wound people.
I do want to also say, yes, those years of doing very well financially, but working literally myself into a stress ball.
Yeah,
Just a ball of stress. Really, when you work like that, you have no time for community.
you
So
don't have time for community.
friends fall away, family falls away, and you just can't do it. And I have found of course, in recent years, we do have to thank, the pandemic for this. I mean, my peeps are online, they're so easy to reach. The community is so important. You can find support,
Right.
online. It works beautifully.
And that's another thing I recognized is part of my abundance was I always had the people that I can rely on. That could be family, that could be friends. And I was lucky in attracting the right people. And that was my abundance that I wasn't seeing. But the moment I started feeling lonely as a bridge walker, I realized the importance of community. That's
Yes.
what I realized, because I do have many bridge walkers in my friends and family, but they are closeted, right? They're not accepting their spirituality to themselves yet. So we couldn't have these open conversations that I now have with bridge walkers. So part of me did not understand the importance of community until I felt the need for it. And that wasn't satisfied through my family or through my friends.
I want to say that I think that this need for community is underrated.
Yeah.
Because, and we should have also learned this from the pandemic, right? From separating ourselves out, can't be near anybody, and as someone who's a little older, I feel that, you don't get roommates necessarily when you're in your 60s, for instance.
Right.
You get buds, the nature of just aging also isolates you a bit in that process. I mean, that can happen from 20 to 30 as well as 50 to 60 or whatever, but it does occur. So I do find that there is just nothing like the energy of hanging with people that you have things in common with and that you can have stimulating conversation about. There's just nothing like that level of support.
I absolutely agree. And for me, it is actually one of my love languages, I realize. Like,
Yes.
having conversations, in-depth conversations with people is my love language.
Yeah.
Like, if I love you, like, that's what happens with my clients. Sometimes we go over time and I'm just like, I'm not even worried about it. Like, they used to say like, oh no, give only what you promise. Like, if you give more than that, people take your time for granted. They don't. My clients don't do that. They are like, Manasi, I apologize. Our conversation is going more than the time we have allotted for ourselves. But honestly, I enjoyed so much. And of course, sometimes there are restrictions on time because the next client is coming in. But the point is, that is my love language, having in-depth conversations and experiences of hanging out, discussing your struggles, discussing your wins and victories. All of that is my love language.
Yes.
And that's why I love doing these podcasts. I love doing the events. So I'm like, if this is my love language, I want my business to have it, right? And that is my abundance. Like somebody else may say like having just one-on-one conversations is abundance because you can charge very high for it. That is not abundance for me if that's the only thing I'm doing in my business. Yes, I love having in-depth conversations one-on-one, but I also love the communal experiences. And people, you got to understand, I am from India. It is a collectivist culture. Like we have started our season of festivals now. It's such a vibrant season in India because if you go to India, we are like dancing together, we are praying together, we are eating together. Like a lot of things are done in a community, and it feels so nourishing. But also, because I was growing up in the collectivist culture, I also understood that community can also be toxic if it is not a healthy community for you, which is why we need community of the people who are on the same vibration, who are on the same wavelength, who are on the same ideas, right? Like they're looking into the same ideas, because otherwise that goes into like Indian matchmaking.
My favorite thing, right?
The toxic aspects of collectivist community oriented culture. Like people think that they deserve to tell you how you should live your life.
So I want to say something else about community. So because I did recognize over the years that I was missing this. I mean, Manipur, it's kind of like, I'm lonely, right? Yeah. I'm lonely, I'm miserable. Where are my peeps, right? I would recognize that something was wrong, but I would try to look for that community based on also those sorts of status things, like, oh, I'm supposed to look for these business connections here, or I'm supposed to, and frankly, I mean, because I like diversity. I have, very diverse interests. So, I might enjoy, I was a beekeeper for 14 or 15 years. I might enjoy the activity of beekeeping, but maybe rural beekeepers in Maine were less progressive than me. And so I didn't feel as nourished emotionally or spiritually by them. Not to fault beekeepers, but I'm just saying as an example. Right. So I would go where I thought I should find friends, but I couldn't find them.
Yes.
It's the same thing. You have to be your authentic self, put it out there, see who responds. Because you know how it is. When you find someone that you love to talk with, you can't stop, right? It's like, the ideas flow. There's this just incredible flow to it. Just like we tried to talk about being in the flow of anything else. Right. So I think that's very important.
And you're absolutely right, because same thing happened with me too. When I started my business, people are like, you should go to Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
I went to Chamber of Commerce. All they were doing, like Marcy, I swear, this is not even made up stuff. Like I went to some event and they advertised that as like a lunch, like networking lunch. So I'm sitting here thinking, oh, you were sitting and chatting and it's like a nice, nourishing lunch, right? No, I went there. Usually people came with like some other person, like a buddy. And I was also like, I'm scared, I'm going to a new place. So I invited my friend to do it. So my friend was like together with me. We two are sitting there. Nobody else is talking to us. They may have made their own connections that they were talking to, but otherwise everybody is eating like a lunch separately almost. And there is like some icebreaker activity. Okay, well, sure, force something. Okay, sure, we'll do it, right? So we did it anyway. And after that, they said, now this is like a speed dating. So you go around and 5 minutes per person, you just talk to them and like get to know them. I was like, okay, sure, 5 minutes would be good enough. My first interaction, Marcy, I go in there, this person does not ask me my name, does not tell me his name, gives me a business card and tells me, if you ever need like some kind of XYZ service, then I'm your person, refer the business to me. And I was like, really? That's how you date? Because clearly this shouldn't be working. Because you must be unmarried at this point, because this is not working for you.
I've been to
nothing wrong with staying unmarried, by the way. Let me that clarification here.
I've been to the same Chamber of Commerce, only up here, and I've done the BNI meetings too, and I just can't do it. Like, it puts me on the spot. I'm not, I'm looking for the connection, the emotional thing, the heart, and I just, and we all hear right now how much I speak, right? Yeah. I go silent in those meetings.
That's exactly right.
Myself.
And I felt, Marcy, something was wrong with me, that I couldn't network with these people. I couldn't give them my business card, meaning I must not have the confidence in my own thing. I didn't even have business card, for goodness sake, because I was doing my business online, right? But that felt so disconnecting.
Yeah.
There's no connection. And I'm like, I'm never going to find friends here. I'm never going to find business connection. One of the reasons I actually took my business online was this, that I was coming across the crowds that were, generally speaking, old white men doing things their way, not recognizing their own hidden spots for around women, but then definitely around women of color, definitely around an immigrant woman. We're from a different culture that they are not used to. So I'm just like, oh my gosh, the gap is so big that I can never change myself enough to fit your standards. Just never going to happen. And initially I tried, but that didn't work, which is when I understood I shouldn't even be doing it in the first place. Because in trying to fit your standards, I'm hurting myself.
Yeah.
And I'm hurting my culture. I'm hurting my wisdom. That the wisdom of 7 chakra would have never come out if I would have stayed stuck in the Chamber of Commerce type of business.
No, it's completely true. And I have the same experience. And by the way, because I mean, now I can say, well, because I'm a Bridgewalker, I too like analytical things and spiritual things. And by the way, I may not always tell you that it's going on for me, but I always see both at the same time. So to our listeners, I was an auto mechanic for a while. I ran auto dealerships and things along those lines, but think about it, right? When I went into the home flipping business, which by the way, I began in 1994, it was all men. I was always the only woman. So, and I'm in charge, right? I'm owning the business. So always working with men. Let me tell you, difficult situation for me. I am doing the houses and the cars or whatever because of the spiritual impression that I'm getting in the business and loving what I'm doing. And all day long, I'm fighting all kinds of systemic issues about sexism and ageism and what I'm not supposed to be doing. And why are you running male-run jobs and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not getting nourished in any way at all, right? Right. So truthfully, I don't owe this to Joel. I mean, I had figured this out, my husband, Joel, but Joel said to me one time after listening to a conversation of mine a couple of years ago, I was talking to someone on the phone about this was the beginning sort of, Manasi, of me understanding that from what I loosely was calling at the time a consulting position. I was talking to them about what home they wanted, et cetera, how they were to find that, outside of the regular real estate agent. This was, what are they looking for, right? This conversation that you really don't have with a real estate agent. And Joel said, okay, you've just been on the phone for like 2 hours. You need to start charging for this. That's what you want to do, is convey that spirit information to people. Right. That's when you light up, Marcy. You can't even get off the phone.
Right. And you are so awesome at it. Like you are just natural with it. So for people who don't know, when we were buying our house, in the process of buying our house in 2020, was it 2020? It was 2020. We ended up buying in 2021, but we started in 2020. Yeah. Marcy was our real estate, I would say, consultant at this point, but energetic. She would guide us. So I would basically send Marcy pictures from like Zillow. I was like, Marcy, what do you think? And Marcy would be like, Manasi, does not look good. This is like, you should go to the open house of this one, the other one. And then she would talk about the analytical aspects too, where it was like, hey, this house is built in this time. They usually have these kind of problems. So make sure when you go to visit, you check this out. So Marcy has been a wonderful, wonderful guide for us in that process. So Marcy, if you are opening it up as a business, like right here, invite people, because
I love to do it. I mean, this has expanded so much for me. So it's but I mean, it's not just the buildings, it's the land that your property is on. It's helping you figure out what you want. I mean, as clients, it's spiritually where people are in their life. It's the energy. You said it very well, actually, recently. My jam is sort of energy in places.
Energy in places, yeah.
For people that often home is central to every one of us,
Right.
regardless if it's a tent or a mansion or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
It's spiritually important, and that aspect I bring to it. I'm also happy to talk about, how much it costs to put a roof on, but
Right.
that is, that information is there. I do know quite a bit from having worked in the industry for so long,
Yeah.
and and I love those conversations too.
Absolutely. And that's
But
exactly an example of a Bridgewalker merging their analytical side, which is
yeah,
finances and actual structure of the building, understanding what falls, what doesn't, what is sustainable, and bringing out the spiritual aspect of it, which is energy, connection with the nature, with the land, ecology, sustainable, environmentally conscious ways of building, all of that. Like, this is a great example of how Bridgewalkers merge their two sides, and
yes,
this is what comes out of it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
that's my jam these days, is trying to and to our listeners, I'm just trying to find a way. I do not have a website at this point that reflects this new pivot for me,
right.
but I am in the process of doing that, and very excited about it. But yes,
And whenever Marcy is ready to accept clients in whichever form she does,
yeah,
we will make sure we will let you know on the podcast.
yeah.
We'll
Thank you.
announce it.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
But coming back to our conversation of community, yes, it is important to recognize how much harm rugged individualism does to us, and how abundant it is to be in communities that feel nourishing to you versus the ones that make you feel that who you are don't belong.
Now, it is my feeling, Manasi, that I struggled with finding community early on. I was a friendly enough person. I had friends, but I struggled with finding community, especially around work, because I did not have self-worth at the time.
I agree. I had this, yeah. So part of it is because when you hang out in, okay, so no, there are multiple aspects that give you the messaging that who you are is not good enough, right?
Yes.
But when you hang out in these communities, I literally, like I gave you the example, right? Like them giving me business cards, I saw that as like, oh, these are like gung-ho people, like they're getting things done. And I am not the one. I'm not, I must not have confidence in my business, or I didn't feel confidence or courageous. And I looked down on myself because I couldn't give them my business card. What I should have looked at, and that was because of lack of self-worth. Now, if I had that self-worth, I would have questioned, does this feel good to me? Is this my way of doing it? Is this the right way of doing it? But instead of questioning all of that, I actually looked down on myself because I felt like there must be, my go-to mechanism of justifying what I was experiencing in the world was like, there must be something wrong with me. That was my go-to mechanism to justify it. So then you pick up all these wounds that ultimately lead to like the scarcity mindset, not abundant thinking, because you don't see the abundance that you are. You, the divine you, just the way you are, your unique way of being, you don't see abundance in that. And then you feel that there must be something wrong with me. And then that is what is reflected outside. So people don't pay you money because what you're reflecting is, first of all, you don't attract the right people who value you.
Right.
And then number two, those who see you, they don't see your value. Like white men hardly ever saw my value. There are some who were my clients and they did see my value. But generally speaking, it was very hard for me to justify that they are seeing my value. There was no proof for it. So, and not to say like they valued my education. They valued like, oh, how amazing I am in like XYZ type of mathematical things or something.
But I think also often women, I know this was a case for me, because I worked with very successful white men, right? But they would also feel challenged by me in a way that maybe made them feel uncomfortable. So I didn't often get the juiciness back anyway from them. So they still were not, even if I was successful with them, I was still not in my element, so to speak. And therefore it was not supporting me. Therefore, I was still carrying the wound forward versus the sense of, I cannot, I think, we tend to, and I understand how it happens, really. We tend to do this from, I think exactly backwards, from the top down. We know we need to earn money. We might know at what level that is. We might even choose a profession based on that. I want to be a lawyer because it's going to make me so much money.
Yeah.
But then at some point during that career, you're going to say to yourself, do I love law? Do I love the way my day is spent? And the answer is maybe no. We really do need, I can't encourage people enough, when you go to resolve your own personal, in this case, maybe money wounds or personal wounds around abundance, how you perceive yourself, that is when the goods start coming to you.
Mm-hmm.
That is when you feel good about your day. And as such, you're smiling, you're glowing, other things attract you. It really is energy. It really does work. It's really pretty simple. We're just misdirected a great deal by our cultures.
Right. And you hit the nail on the head when you said, even when you are successful in these traditionally established systems, you are not in your full element.
No.
Right? Because you have to change yourself in order to create success in somebody else's definition of success.
Yeah.
And when you change yourself enough, then you feel like you will be accepted, but you will still never be completely accepted. So there is no point in changing and trying to build success in their way. That's why we just have to come in our element. I was telling, one day I wrote this post on Facebook and it got like a huge response, like 500 people commenting on it, right? What I was saying was, basically, given my experience in the spiritual world as an Indian woman, so let me say it differently, as a woman who is not thin, young, white woman, as a person who is not an Indian man from a privileged caste, as a person who refuses to culturally appropriate and spiritually bypass anything,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It was very hard for me to see myself as a spiritual teacher.
Yeah.
Because the visuals of those that you're seeing that are successful is not reflecting me in there, right? That's not what I see. So it was very hard for me. So I wrote some post around it, right? And this woman, she came to me and she said, Manasi, congratulations, you are bringing your own chair to the table, your own seat to the table. No, but hear me out, Marcy. I actually said, listen, I'm not even bringing my chair at your table. I'm building a whole freaking different banquet hall where there will be tables for everybody who has held a marginalized identity. They don't see represented themselves. They have their own halls where they can hold their conferences, and they will hold chairs for anybody who wants to attend it. I'm not just bringing the new chair at the table. I don't even want to play at your table anymore. I want my own banquet hall. That's what I am building, right? So that's when I understood that no matter how much I try to change, it is never going to help me. It's not going to help my self-worth. And I will never feel satisfied in the success that I am trying to create your way, that I believe I should deserve anyway. I'm going to define my own path to my success and my definition of success.
I think it's true and it's beautiful. And you are doing that. And I benefit from it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I also think that there really is no such thing as a person. And forgive me, I may step in here, Manasi. So if you think I should say this in a better way, please put that out there. Marginalization does not help anybody. It doesn't even help the people that are at the top of the whatever that we're talking about, the caste or the white privileged guy or the whatever. In the short version, maybe, unless we lift us all up, right? Equity, right? Then we don't move forward. But you definitely can't play in that. I always felt, no matter how successful I was, that I was losing, right? For some reason. Part of it was self-recrimination. Now I'm 66. I just don't look like a gorgeous, as you put it, thin white woman online that, I'm right. Yeah. So I can never achieve it. I've always been short anyway. And I always said, I would have been more successful as a tall woman. I mean, like, anyway, all these things that women go through and that we're conscious of now, but this is true for everybody. We're all marginalized. We need to stop trying to do those things and appease the marginalization. Move away from that. Make yourself feel well.
Exactly. And we have to, because the reason we have to change those social systems and structures is precisely because it's hurting everybody.
It's hurting
Because
everyone.
it's in the privileged system, even the people. I promise you, the guy who gave me his business card right away, he is probably taught, if he is, let's say he's an introvert, he is probably taught, no, you cannot be successful as an introvert because you have to go out there and make these connections happen. And that's how you're going to get your business. Imagine the wounds that are on that person, on that man who is trained to think this way. This is one of the reasons men don't even access the potential of their Manipur chakra, because they are told that if you access your emotions, you are being weak. Right? So they are losing like whole arena, whole set of a set of 7 chakras, a set of 7 energies. One of the energies is just missing. Their whole experience is missing it. And then what do? Ultimately bring out imbalanced expression out in the world and try to control women and people of other gender, people who have queer identities, try to control them through your wounded expression. That's what men are doing. But it is coming from their wounds. And they are not recognizing it because they don't understand how marginalization impacts everybody.
Everybody.
And if we look into the spiritual aspect of it, that's like goes to the very basic. Every human being, every form of life is a way divinity expresses itself in that unique way. So if you are not even recognizing divinity of one type of identity, you are literally losing on divinity. Right? The more people that we recognize, and this is why I think building communities that are healthy and welcoming for marginalized identities is so important.
So important, yes.
Because when we see divinity in each person, the way it is uniquely expressing through them, not in the way that you think it should express, but through them, the way it is expressing through them, we appreciate it. Imagine how strong a community will be. And imagine how nourishing it will be for each individual. Because now they are not looked down upon, but they are valued and appreciated and admired for who they are, not looked down upon or oppressed or marginalized. So it is only this one way of building community, which is seeing every person's unique divinity and encouraging it, that will not only build good individuals that have sense of self-worth, but it will also build the best community that is potentially available to us as human beings living, as spirits living a human form.
Absolutely. Could not agree more. I know. I know.
We got to conclude here. Because
I know. But that's a great place to stop.
Isn't it?
Yeah,
isn't it?
It is.
Because it's like, I absolutely love to imagine and just like daydream about the potential of the community that we can have if we build it this way.
I think so. And the joy that comes from feeling well, first of all, physical wellness comes from feeling well spiritually, right? As well. And you get closer to whatever that potential word is. You bloom, you grow, you blossom, you magnify that energy within the community that you're building, and it's unstoppable. I mean, it's expansive.
It is. And imagine how abundant that is. Like, that's the true abundance, right? Like, we are liberating our souls and coming together to build something that is much bigger than us.
Yes.
That's abundance. People, if you want to be part of these communities, consider joining Bridgewalkers Playground, Patreon, any of my events. Literally, like, my business is shifting towards building these communities now. So guess what, people? Link is in the description. Come on over. I look forward to seeing you there.
And you'll find me there too.
Marcy's there too. Yes. See you there.